Hi, my name is Patty Johnson, and I am the founding editor and executive director of Art F City. I'm here talking to Marsha Owett, who is a very good friend of mine, great artist, and is having a show opening up very soon. So, Marsha, we've known each other for a long time, 3 years, and since I've known you, you've been making art. But I wondered, maybe could you tell everybody how long you've been making art and what got you started?
I have been making art since I was a very little girl, since I was about this big. My mother was an art collector, and she wanted me to be an artist, so I grew up with the expectation of being an artist, like other kids grow up with expectations of being a lawyer or a doctor. So I always painted, she just had me paint, stand me in front of an easel with a paintbrush, and I just painted since as long as I could remember. But I also did a lot of photography, and I completely switched to just doing photography, let me say about 4 years ago. So it hasn't been that long.
Yeah, and what prompted that switch?
I think I actually enjoy photography more. When I was applying to art school, I actually wanted to go into the photography program, but I went into the fine art program instead. So I think it's actually kind of came back around to what I always wanted to do.
Well, and now, with digital photography, you can take, an enormous number of photographs, and that very often is part of the process that I see in many artists. I wondered if you could talk about your process a little bit, because it seems very intense from what I know of it.
My process is to take thousands of photographs for one series, and I use the photographs in a way as little pixels of a painting, So I take thousands of photos, and then I print them, and then I put them all over the walls. And then I just start collecting things that seem to fit together for me, that create a narrative.
And so it's a very intuitive process.
Absolutely.
And that seems very much related to some of the paintings that I've seen in the past too, which were sort of abstract expressionist in nature and very intuitively driven. How do you make decisions when everything is just sort of based on how you feel? If that's even exactly what the process is.
I put on really loud music and I just stand here. I literally just put on really loud music and I stand in front of the wall and I just look, and then something will pop out and I'll move it to another wall, and then I'll look for something that relates to that image, and I'll just move the little photos around, tiny little photos around for days.
Are there things that seem right and wrong when you
they don't seem right or wrong. It's more of a gut feeling of being really excited about the image that I'm seeing. I see an image and I feel like it really turns me on. This is a great image, and something about it is really exciting to me. So I look for that kind of a feeling. I'm analyzing the color and the composition and all of those things, but I don't start doing that until I get that initial gut feeling of just being turned on by the image.
Yeah, it's funny when you talk about it like that. It sounds like it's the art making practice is almost instinctual for you,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is a very sort of basic sort of feeling that drives the process. But it does seem like for your work can look drastically different based on the size that it is. So behind us we have series that are all sort of fairly small, 11 by 17, or I'm just taking a guess, I don't actually know, but
it is 11 by 17.
Oh, there we go. You've made much larger photographs, right, and smaller photographs. How do you decide how large a piece is going to be?
So behind us is kind of the last size before they become the actual size. I do a lot of color correction And when I say color correction, it's not that I drastically change the color of the images, but I'm very, very specific about the slightest tone of every color. And the process of color correction also involves a lot of printing. I will send out for proofs, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times with the slightest changes. I'm sure nobody else would notice except for me. And you've seen me go with that process through that process. It's definitely labor intensive, but I really enjoy it.
I mean, it's also almost a bit of a mystery to me because you'll say like, oh, this color just isn't right. I need this color. And to me, I look at them and I'm like, okay, this is like one of those screen tests where like nobody but like the 0.1% of the population can tell the difference between one color and another. Like, it definitely gets to that granular level. Given that that's the case, like how important is it to you that you're directly involved in the printing process?
Well, it's very important to me. I don't have anyone else color correct my prints, and even though they're very minor color corrections, it becomes more evident when you look at the whole body of work. So because tone is incredibly important, and you may not notice that the tone is off when you're looking at just one set, but then when you look at the entire body of work, if the tone is slightly off, then it's off from the other however many 20 images.
I mean, I'm just like, it's so funny. I'm so fascinated listening to all this though, because I don't want to blow up any other questions that we've had planned, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, we talked about what your work is about, and you had said it's about a loss of control.
This particular series is about
series.
Yeah, it's a loss of control.
And on the one hand, I definitely. Well, I'll let you explain why that is, but we have just talked about the most obsessive, controlling process ever, and then we've got it seems like sometimes the process might be at odds with the or maybe at odds is the wrong word, but the process is not necessarily aligned with or to do with this content of the work.
Well, this particular series, even it's about the loss of control, but it's about how I feel when I feel loss of control, and it's kind of tumultuous and torn apart and manic and blown around. So that's actually what happens to me when I don't have that precise control. I get very, very upset.
With these series, though, they're it does seem like it's a way of kind of managing whatever that feeling is, right?
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
Especially the serial nature of it, right? You have something that's out of, sort of out of focus, but it's out of focus in 5 different ways.
Right.
And so it's a lot of different perspectives on that, particular feeling, which is, I don't know, to me it's interesting. But it also creates a kind of whole that is in some way managed. Why do you make art?
I make art because I feel miserable if I don't make art.
You have to?
I have to. I have to make art, yes. I'm just not satisfied with life if I don't make art. Just seems like something's missing.
I know that you said that it was about a loss of control, but I mean, I think the subject matter itself, I don't look at a flower, or I guess these kinds of flowers, and not think that there are some sexual undertones there. Is that the case, or am I just totally making that up?
No, there's always sexual undertones in everything, isn't there?
Right.
Well, it's actually, we've had this conversation before. There is a certain aspect to it, that this is how flowers, pollinate. They actually pollinate through wind, so you can sort of look at it a lot of different ways.
It seems like a lot of this process, you have to spend it just by yourself in the studio. It's a lot of alone time. And I remember once we were talking and you talked about, I think it was about something unrelated, but like how when you are alone, that's like when you make like the hard decisions. That's when you really kind of get to the core of who you are. And I kind of wondered whether that was like something that was present in your studio practice as well.
Absolutely. There's like an ebb and a flow to putting a series together, because it's not just one image, There's always that like first excitement at like finding something in the work, and then as I work on it, there's always like a moment or several days or several weeks when it's not working out, and then it kind of comes back around. And to me, creating a series of work it's a lot like doing a single painting, where you go through different stages of the process of the painting. So you begin, and then you have a hard time with it, and then you sort of find it, you get to that end point of having a complete painting, which is, which kind of goes back to that satisfaction that we were talking about before, where I can finally say like, okay, this is it. This is the series. It's 20 images, it's 15 images, it's 5 images, or whatever it is. To me, it's a whole.
I guess that leads to my final question, which is like, what for you constitutes success, like in your studio and for a body of work?
I think it's a combination of things. It's definitely a feeling that I have that the work is successful, but it's also, having studio visits and having, you come, having other people come, talking about the work. There is a lot of confidence building in having studio visits. There's also a lot of changes in the edit that happen through studio visits. I have people come and I see the work through their eyes, especially because my work is so abstract, and it, people look at each image differently. I have a different visual connection to the image or images than someone who is looking at it, who comes into my studio or sees them at a show. I purposely create work that speaks to the individual who is looking at the image, so it can change.
Yeah, that reminds me of something Jackson Pollock said. I can't remember the exact year, but it was to a radio station in New York, and he somebody had asked him how he wanted the audience to receive his work, and he said that they should be kind of passive and just like let the work wash over them, and that would, like, the work should speak to them, so they were just well, not just, but they were the receptacle of the work, and that each person would then have a different experience with it, which seems sort of similar to what you're talking about.
It's very similar, and it's actually, kind of going back around to one of the earlier questions. It's also the way that I make the work. Like, I let it wash over me, starting with the small prints, when I just stand there and I just let the images wash over me, and that's, in the end, that's what I would like the viewer to experience. I would like them to just find their own connection, whatever it may be, and let it, I would like the work to strike an emotional chord. It's not like a cerebral experience. It's a very like emotional washing over experience, like you said.
Here's the thing, when you put this show together, and we can see the components behind us, what is your hope? for the final version of this exhibition?
That is a good question. You know, I don't think of it that way. I kind of just put it out there and I don't expect anything. It's going to sound kind of, corny, but, just doing the work and getting it out there is kind of the end of what my job is. Not like job in a sense of sales, but like my job in a sense of being an artist. Like, this is where I stop and the work begins. So that's really it. It's like now it's the work's turn to just be out there and have people experience it.